I never thought I'd stand in the middle of a crowded room, feeling like I was utterly invisible. But tonight, at this family dinner, that was exactly how it felt. I'm 34, a research scientist at a biotech firm with a doctorate and a decade of dedication under my belt. 10 years of late nights, failed experiments, and breakthroughs that no one really talks about at home. I've been the family's invisible backbone for years. The one quietly footing bills, covering medical costs, and keeping the household afloat. But here, among the clinking glasses and forced laughter, I am just the bookish one. Lucy Boone, my mother-in-law, sat across from me, her smile tight and sharp as a blade. Earlier this evening, I had discreetly handed over the check to cover the down payment on her brand new car, the shiny red SUV she'd been eyeing for months. She flashed her teeth in thanks, but then, with that subtle venom she's so good at hiding, she muttered under her breath, "Helena's so clever with her books but can't manage a simple thing like picking a practical car." The words hit me like a cold slap, but I swallowed the sting and nodded politely. It wasn't the first time Lucy had made these kinds of remarks about me. Her way of reminding everyone I was the outsider, the intellectual nobody she felt threatened by. I own the family home, though no one here knows it. The Victorian house in the old neighborhood passed down from my grandmother is legally mine, yet I keep that fact tightly locked away. A secret shield. It's a quiet power, one I've never wielded, unsure if I ever will. The polite smiles, the laughter, the chatter, they barely mask the tension simmering just beneath the surface. I feel it in the tightness of my chest, the flutter of anxiety whenever Lucy sneers or Daniel shifts uncomfortably in his seat. I want to be accepted, to be part of this family, not just the woman who pays for everything and takes the silent abuse. Part of me hopes it will change someday, but deep down, I know I'm balancing on a thin wire, loving enough to keep giving, frustrated enough to wonder how long I can keep holding on. The room buzzed with the scent of roasted chicken and candle wax, but my senses felt dulled, focused inward. When Lucy's comment slipped out, I forced a smile, counting the seconds until I could slip away unnoticed. I remind myself, quietly, that this is family, and families are complicated. I'll wear this invisible crown a little longer, holding on to the hope that beneath her biting words, Lucy might someday see me, not just as a financial resource or a target for her barbs, but as someone worthy of respect. But tonight, as the laughter swirled around me and I remained unseen, that hope felt thinner than ever. When I was 17, my mother told me bluntly, "You're not smart enough for college. Get a real job." It wasn't said with malice. It was more like a decree, a cold truth she believed was kindness in disguise. But the words echoed in my head long after she walked away, a relentless echo shaping how I saw myself. My younger sister Lisa, the golden child, was celebrated for every little success, the perfect grades, the scholarships, the applause at family gatherings. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the dreamer they tolerated but never really believed in. I remember the science fair I won in high school. I stayed up nights perfecting my project, fueled by a rare mixture of excitement and desperation to prove myself. But at the family dinner afterward, no one mentioned it. They passed the mashed potatoes and talked about Lisa's latest dance recital instead. Her modest achievement ballooned into a family-wide celebration. I told myself it was tough love, a different kind of care, but the sting lingered like a fresh wound. My accomplishments felt like invisible ink on a page, only visible to me. This pattern didn't start with Lucy, but it's what she channels now with such expertise and venom. She mocks my intellect, calls my work wasteful book smarts, and makes jokes about how I'm too sensitive for the real world. Years ago, I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to her insecurities or jealousy. But the deeper truth settled in. I was an easy target because I kept giving, because I never fought back. Every cutting remark reminded me of my mother's words. Every dismissal a replay of those teenage years when I was told I wasn't enough. The roots of this toxic dynamic stretch back decades, entangling me in a web of self-doubt I'm still trying to unravel. Yet, despite it all, I kept working harder, hoping recognition would come, hoping love would show itself in less conditional forms. I stayed silent at family dinners when Lucy sneered, bit back tears when my contributions were minimized, and hid my heartbreak behind polite smiles. These memories, bitter as they are, remind me why I've always been so determined, not just to prove them wrong, but to carve out a place where I belong. But tonight, the past feels heavier than ever, pressing down on my shoulders as I sit quietly, waiting for the next jab. I've poured so much of myself into this family without ever asking for a thank you. Every month, I write a check for the mortgage, $2,500 that covers the house we all live in, a house that's technically mine, though none of them know that. I've paid off Lisa's student loans, $20,000 over the years, because she always said she couldn't manage with the part-time jobs she juggled. And when Richard, my husband's father, had those hospital stays last year, I covered $15,000 in medical bills without blinking. It's a quiet sacrifice, but one that feels like my duty. I've skipped vacations, missed out on research conferences that could have boosted my career, all because someone needed me. When Daniel asks me gently, "Helena, when do you get to take care of yourself?" I smile and say, "Family comes first." It's true. I love them. I love the messy, imperfect family that depends on me. But sometimes, that love feels like a chain, holding me in a role that's both indispensable and invisible. Lisa, now married but emotionally tethered to me, occasionally offers an awkward "thank you," but mostly dismisses my sacrifices as just what Helena does. It's as if my efforts have become routine, expected, rather than extraordinary. Lucy, meanwhile, remains a cold force. She calls me too sensitive, mocks my academic world as impractical, and dismisses my sacrifices as wasted time. She never misses a chance to remind me I'm not real enough for this family, like I'm some outsider who'll never belong. The house, that grand Victorian inherited from my grandmother, sits in my name quietly, a secret weapon, or maybe just a refuge. I don't know if I'll ever use it, or if it's just a reminder that I hold more power than they realize. For now, I keep it locked away, just like the truth about my own worth. Every day feels like balancing on a knife's edge, giving too much, demanding nothing, hoping for love but bracing for disappointment. Daniel's steady presence and gentle words are my anchor, but even he isn't my shield against Lucy's cutting words or Lisa's distant detachment. I am the family's silent provider, the one who keeps the lights on and the bills paid. And yet, sometimes I wonder if anyone truly sees me at all. The weight of all this invisibility presses down harder with every passing year. The birthday party was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a chance to relax, celebrate, and be surrounded by family. But as soon as Lucy opened her mouth, that hope began to unravel. She turned to me in front of everyone, her voice loud and dripping with sarcasm. All that schooling and still can't manage a simple dinner. The room froze for a heartbeat. Some relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, others chuckled nervously, unsure whether to intervene. My chest tightened instantly, a cold knot forming deep inside. I felt exposed, like a child caught in a cruel game. I forced a tight smile, mentally counting the seconds until I could retreat. "I'm proud of my work," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil roiling underneath. Inside, I scrambled for reasons. Maybe Lucy was stressed. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Anything to hold on to the fragile hope that this wasn't a deeper, more personal attack. But the sting lingered, a sharp reminder of the invisible line I walked every day between acceptance and rejection. Later, I slipped out of the room, the weight of eyes and whispered comments chasing me through the hallway. Daniel found me by the back door, concern written all over his face. "Did that really upset you?" he asked gently. I nodded, feeling the first cracks in my carefully maintained armor. I don't want to make a scene, I murmured, not wanting to give Lucy the satisfaction of a reaction. But in that moment, my quiet departure was my first visible boundary, a small assertion that maybe, just maybe, I deserved better. As I stood there, breathing in the cold night air, the seed of doubt took root. Was Lucy's disdain really just stress? Or something more? I still clung to hope that our relationship could improve, that respect might one day replace derision. But that night, the laughter inside the house felt hollow, and the future felt suddenly uncertain. For the first time in a long while, I wondered if I was fighting a losing battle. I thought my quiet retreat after the birthday party would cool the tension, but Lucy wasn't about to let me off that easily. Within days, the atmosphere shifted in ways I couldn't immediately pinpoint. At the next family gathering, I noticed the subtle shifts. Relatives who once stopped to chat now offered nothing more than polite nods, avoiding my gaze. Lisa, who had always been a little distant, started passing back my words with a twist, like Helena's just too sensitive, always taking things the wrong way. It stung more than I expected. I caught Lisa cornering Daniel one afternoon, whispering with a smile, "She's overreacting again. Maybe she should just lighten up." That phrase, lighten up, felt like a dismissal, a way to erase my feelings altogether. Then the whispers began. Lucy, with her practiced smile, started planting little seeds of doubt among the extended family. "Helena thinks she's better than us," she murmured casually to Aunt Carol, who nodded and shared it with a cousin. "She never really cared about the family, only what she's getting." It was a slow poison, dripping into conversations that I wasn't invited to, but whose effects I felt in the cold shoulders and forced smiles. The worst was the gaslighting during private moments. Once, Lucy caught me staring silently at my phone, her voice sweet as honey. "Helena, you're imagining things again. You've always been far too sensitive. Everyone loves you here." But I knew the truth in the eyes that darted away when I entered the room, the way the conversation hushed when I approached. My mind became a battleground. Was I really seeing things that weren't there? Was I overreacting, just as they said? I replayed every interaction, every slight, hunting for clues that might prove I was the problem. Daniel, bless him, tried to anchor me. "Don't let them get inside your head," he'd say, squeezing my hand during those moments of doubt. Yet, even his reassurance felt fragile, unable to counter the growing divide. I felt fractured, fragmented. Part of me wanted to withdraw completely. Another part screamed to confront the unraveling web Lucy was spinning. But I held my ground wherever I could, even if it was just a quiet refusal to engage with the whispers or a tight, polite smile. Lucy wasn't just attacking my dignity anymore. She was dismantling my support system. Family members I had once trusted now questioned my motives, my character, all under her subtle direction. It was as if I had become both the victim and the accused in a story only Lucy controlled. The sense of isolation was suffocating. I realized then that even small resistance was intolerable to her. This was no longer about family squabbles. It was a deliberate fracture, and I was caught in the middle, forced to doubt myself while the poison spread. The invisible crown I wore felt heavier than ever, and the hope I'd clung to grew dimmer with every sidelong glance and whispered conversation. Determined not to let this spiral further, I decided to try a different approach, a direct, honest conversation. I arranged a family meeting, inviting Lucy and Richard to sit down with me, hoping to clear the air before things worsened. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the window as we gathered in the living room, the tension palpable but tempered by my calm voice. I spoke carefully, laying out facts. The mortgage payments I had quietly shouldered, the unpaid favors, the emotional weight I carried. "I want us to understand each other better," I said, meeting Lucy's gaze steadily. "I'm asking for mutual respect and honesty. This silence and bitterness, it's tearing us apart. Lucy's response was immediate and theatrical. Her eyes welled with tears, and her voice trembled with what seemed like genuine hurt. "I'm so tired, Helena," she said, wiping her cheek. "I've been crushed under your high and mighty attitude for years. You act like you're better than the rest of us, and it's too much to bear." Her words were a grenade lobbed into my carefully constructed peace. Richard sat silently nearby, his expression unreadable. But I noticed a slight nod, a silent endorsement of her victimhood. The cousin we'd invited to mediate, hoping for an impartial voice, waved off my concerns as typical family drama, urging us to just get along. The meeting ended with no resolution, the air thick with unspoken accusations and disappointment. I left feeling crushed, my hopes shattered. I had tried to bridge the gap with honesty and vulnerability, only to be met with tears that felt scripted, blame that felt misplaced, and silence that echoed louder than any words. The family's refusal to acknowledge my pain deepened the isolation I already felt. It was a bitter lesson. My efforts to make peace had only highlighted how wide the chasm really was. The quiet battles I fought every day were unseen, and the ones I hoped to win, understanding, respect, seemed further away than ever. A few weeks later, at Daniel's work holiday party, the cracks in our family's facade shattered spectacularly. Lucy, who had until then kept her barbs mostly veiled within family walls, took her cruelty public and merciless. We had arrived expecting a quiet evening of mingling and light-hearted cheer. But Lucy, with a calculated smile, cornered me near the buffet table and, loud enough for several colleagues to hear, revealed my deeply personal financial struggles. "Helena's not as perfect as she pretends," she said, cruelly pulling out the truth about my unpaid student loans from undergrad. All that education, yet drowning in debt. The room froze for a moment, eyes darting toward me, curiosity and judgment swirling in their gazes. Daniel's face went pale, his embarrassment palpable as murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt an icy wave of humiliation wash over me, hot tears threatening to spill despite my best efforts to keep composed. The damage was immediate and tangible. In the weeks that followed, whispers about my financial irresponsibility circulated subtly among colleagues and superiors at the biotech firm where I'd built my career. A promotion I had been on track for slipped through my fingers, replaced by cold looks and mounting doubts about my stability. The professional setback stung deeply, but it was the social fallout and the strain on my marriage that cut the deepest. Daniel confronted Lucy afterward, his voice low and fierce, warning her to stop before she destroyed everything. I bore the full weight of her betrayal. It was no accident, no slip of tongue. Lucy had weaponized my vulnerabilities with terrifying precision. The party's festive lights now seemed cruelly ironic, bright and mocking in the face of the darkness Lucy had unleashed. I realized with chilling clarity that this was no longer about personal jabs or family dynamics. Lucy's attacks were strategic, aimed at crushing me publicly, fracturing my relationships, and undermining my professional standing. Each whispered rumor, each pointed comment was a deliberate strike designed to isolate me further. The stakes had escalated beyond anything I'd imagined, and I was left to pick up the pieces in a landscape that felt increasingly hostile and unforgiving. Despite the devastation, I found myself reaching out again, one last time. I called Lucy, extending an olive branch in the form of practical help with her mounting debts, hoping to find some common ground, some glimmer of peace. I spoke with steady clarity, voice resolute. "I want us to move forward, but I need something from you too. I need respect and honesty, not constant belittling." I laid bare my needs, stripped of pretense or anger, hoping she would see the sincerity behind my words. But Lucy's response was colder than I expected. She declined outright, mocking my pathetic generosity with a biting laugh that cut deeper than any insult. She crossed a line, publicly accusing me of using the family as if my sacrifices were manipulations rather than acts of love. The rejection was a brutal blow, stripping away the last remnants of hope I dared to hold. Daniel stood beside me, his support unwavering as he urged me to reconsider, to protect myself from further harm. In that moment, I understood that I had done everything possible to heal the rift. There would be no reconciliation on her terms. Her refusal to change, to acknowledge me as anything but a target, solidified my resolve that this suffering had to end. The final olive branch had been snapped in half, and with it, the fragile peace I'd clung to dissolved into cold silence. I had hoped that reaching out, opening my heart in that last family meeting, would be the turning point. Instead, it became the moment when the walls around me crumbled entirely. Lucy wielded my kindness like a weapon, twisting it to paint me as the schemer, the manipulator trying to control the family with my money and my supposed high and mighty attitude. The room felt suffocating, every glance sharp and accusing. I could see it in Lisa's eyes, the flicker of doubt, the hesitation as if she was being pulled in two directions. She no longer sought me out. Instead, she kept conversations brief, forced smiles that never reached her eyes. The sisters-in-law I once counted on now avoided me, or spoke in hushed tones behind my back. I was becoming a ghost in the family's gaze. Daniel remained my only constant, his presence a fragile lifeline in the storm. His quiet reassurances soothed the raw nerves Lucy's venom had exposed. Yet even with his support, the isolation gnawed at me. How had it come to this? Was I really the problem? Had my sacrifices blinded me to my own faults? I replayed every interaction, every effort to support the family, trying to find where I had failed. The memory of late nights juggling work and family crises, the countless hidden payments I made so no one else had to worry, now felt like tragic folly. My heart ached with the weight of loneliness. A cold emptiness settled deep in my chest. The house I owned, my secret bastion, suddenly felt like a distant dream, a faint glimmer of power in a world that had turned against me. I retreated inward, hiding my pain behind a mask of poise. The exhaustion was bone deep, the kind that seeps into your soul and steals your breath. I stopped answering calls, avoided family events, and spent evenings staring out at the city lights, searching for a flicker of hope. But all I saw were shadows of broken trust and fractured bonds. Yet beneath the heavy silence, a small voice whispered that I couldn't give up, that somewhere beneath the wreckage, I needed to find strength. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something emptier, colder, more resigned. A quiet moment before the storm, the calm before the breaking point. I told myself that I deserved better, that no one should be allowed to erode your dignity and your worth so completely. But the pain was still fresh, raw, and unrelenting. I was hollow, depleted, and painfully aware that I stood alone. The family I had tried to hold together was unraveling, and I was left clutching the frayed edges in silence. In that bleakness, I began to steel myself for what had to come, the confrontation I could no longer avoid. My heart was bruised, my spirit battered, but beneath it all, something had begun to shift. I didn't yet know what, only that the next step would change everything. The family reunion was supposed to be a respite, a chance to recenter after months of tension. But it became the moment everything shattered beyond repair. I remember the way the afternoon sun filtered through the living room windows, warm and serene, contrasting with the cold dread settling in my stomach. Daniel and Lisa were there, silent witnesses to the nightmare unfolding before us. Lucy had the audacity to reveal the deed transfer as if it were a casual announcement, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "The house is now legally ours," she declared, eyes gleaming with triumph. The words hit me like a physical blow. The house, my sanctuary, my financial safety net, had been stolen right out from under me. I stared at the document in disbelief, the legal language blurring into a meaningless swirl of betrayal. How had I not seen this coming? The home was worth more than $650,000, a legacy passed down through generations, now snatched away without a word. Daniel's jaw tightened beside me. Lisa's face was pale, but Lucy's expression was unrepentant, victorious. There was no room for denial, no shadows to hide behind. The evidence was irrefutable, and the family's facade cracked wide open. In that moment, the veil lifted, and I saw them all for what they truly were: parasites feeding off my generosity, my sacrifices, my very identity. I didn't scream or cry. There was no dramatic outburst, just a cold, hard clarity that settled over me like ice. The hope I'd clung to, the fragile dream of acceptance and respect, died in that instant. It wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. It was legal theft, a calculated dismantling of my security. The tears threatened to come, but I swallowed them down, suppressing the raw shock with a numbness that felt foreign but necessary. My role as the silent provider, the invisible backbone of this family, was over. The breaking point had arrived, and it redefined everything I thought I was. I was no longer the victim waiting to be seen. I was something else now, someone who had to survive, no matter what it took. Alone in my apartment that night, the weight of the betrayal pressed down until I could barely breathe. I thought about every year I had given them, every dollar, every favor, every quiet concession made in the name of family. The pattern was painfully clear now. Since I was 17, I had been letting them take pieces of me without ever demanding restitution. How blind I had been. How desperate to believe in something that never existed. Anger simmered beneath the surface, but it was born from deep, aching pain. Never again. I whispered to the empty room, the words shaking with fierce resolve. The clarity brought with it a strange kind of power. I wasn't just hurt. I was awake. For decades, I had turned a blind eye, excusing their cruelty as misunderstandings or family quirks. Now I saw it for what it was: exploitation dressed up as entitlement. I thought of the house, the money I controlled, the evidence I had gathered quietly over the years. Legal documents, bank statements, messages. They had underestimated me, assuming silence was submission. But this awakening was different. Forgiveness was no longer an option. This was about survival, about reclaiming what was mine, about making sure they felt the consequences of their actions. I felt the cold edge of determination sharpen within me. The grief was still there, heavy and raw, but it was no longer the whole story. Beneath it, a calculated anger pulsed, controlled, precise, ready to be wielded. I would no longer be the woman who walked quietly through their judgments and betrayals. The new Helena was rising from the ashes of the old, guarded, strategic, unyielding. I imagined the road ahead, not as a path of revenge, but as a careful setting of boundaries. This was the birth of a new fight, one I was finally prepared to lead. That evening, I sat down with Daniel and let the truth spill out. The theft, the lies, the long years of being unseen and unvalued. "I'm done being silent," I said, my voice steady but fierce. The words surprised even me. They carried a weight I hadn't known I could summon. Daniel listened closely, his eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and fierce loyalty. We talked late into the night, not just about the betrayal, but about what had to come next. Our plan was clear: no rash actions, no petty retaliation. Instead, we would build walls where there had been open doors, cutting off communication, stopping financial support, letting the natural consequences unfold. I shared my assessment. Lucy was the heart of the poison, but the ripple would touch the whole family. This wasn't about breaking people down. It was about reclaiming my life and protecting what was left. We discussed legal consultations, tightening control over assets, and documenting every interaction. The silence I once dreaded now felt like armor, a strategic withdrawal that would speak louder than any argument. Daniel's cautious resolve bolstered my own. We were aligned, united in purpose. As I looked out the window, the city skyline shimmered with lights, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a calm I hadn't known before. The victim I had been was fading away, replaced by someone who understood the game and was ready to play it. On her terms. The conversation with Daniel sealed this transformation. No longer would I be invisible or taken for granted. I was stepping into a new role, one defined not by sacrifice, but by strength, clarity, and unyielding resolve. The journey ahead was uncertain, but at last, I was ready to face it head-on. I sat at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun filtering weakly through the blinds, casting long shadows over the scattered papers and bank statements before me. The house was eerily quiet, the usual hum of family life replaced by the palpable tension settling deep in my chest. I had spent hours sifting through the financial tangle that had grown dense and suffocating over the years. Lucy's reliance on me was laid bare in black and white. Car payments she never made on time, credit card bills I had quietly covered, monthly living expenses she treated as her entitlement, all quietly funneled from my accounts. It was a bitter pill to swallow, seeing the full extent of her dependence, but also strangely empowering. The power dynamic was no longer hidden in vague resentments or whispered complaints. It was concrete, measurable, and, most importantly, reversible. My gaze shifted to Lisa's files next. She was another piece in this complicated puzzle, her childcare needs and personal loans quietly propped up by my financial cushions. I had always been the family's safety net, the one who caught the falling pieces without complaint or recognition. And then there was Richard, whose health expenses I silently shouldered, masking the reality behind polite smiles during family dinners. The pattern was undeniable. Their lives, their stability, depended on me more than I did on them. This realization settled deep inside me like cold steel. Finally, I wasn't the vulnerable one. I held the lifeline, the unseen thread they all clung to. I called my lawyer, a calm voice bridging the distance between my anger and the hard facts. The deed transfer was fraudulent, without question. The paperwork bore false signatures and forged documents. Hearing this confirmed that the betrayal went deeper than family drama. It was criminal. We discussed the steps ahead, filing motions to reclaim what was rightfully mine, freezing suspect accounts, compiling evidence for a solid, irrefutable case. I began cataloging everything meticulously: bank transfers, text messages where Lucy casually brushed off debts, contracts revealing the parasitic dynamic that had been hidden beneath smiles and family photos. Each piece reinforced my growing conviction. I wasn't helpless. I was the one with control, with the ability to dismantle the facade. One document caught my eye: a list of Lucy's secret debts. Debts she had hidden even from Richard. These weren't minor things. They were significant liabilities, threatening to spiral out of control if left unchecked. It was a vulnerability I hadn't considered before, a chink in her armor. Financial control was not just a weapon. It was a truth I could wield with precision. I identified my pressure points: financial leverage to reclaim what was mine, communication blackout to weaken their assumptions of entitlement, legal muscle to ensure justice. In that quiet kitchen, the realization settled over me like dawn breaking through the night. I was no longer a passive victim. I was the architect of change. The family's dependence on me was their weakness, and I held the blueprint. Still, it wasn't just about money or legalities. I felt a deep, slow-burning fire ignite inside, a mix of grief and quiet rage tempered by clarity. I wasn't naive anymore. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the resolve. What once felt like a suffocating burden was now a source of strength. I leaned back in my chair, hands clenched tightly on the edge of the table, breathing in the calm before the storm. The power was mine, and the family's silent grip was beginning to loosen. The following days were a study in quiet precision. I became a shadow in my own home, moving through routines with a calm that belied the storm I was preparing. Passwords were changed. Email, bank accounts, shared calendars, locking out the prying eyes that had taken so much without consent. Joint accounts were restricted, access revoked under the guise of technical difficulties or routine security measures. My lawyer helped update legal documents, fortifying my position with fresh wills and powers of attorney, safeguarding assets that had been carelessly exposed. Each step was deliberate, a small but significant brick laid in the fortress I was building around myself. Family gatherings became performances where I played the part of the unruffled observer. I smiled politely at Lucy's pointed remarks, answered Lisa's tentative questions with vague but firm responses, and nodded at Richard's distracted thanks without betraying a flicker of the war raging beneath my skin. They noticed the subtle shifts: calls unanswered, support delayed, financial promises quietly withdrawn, but none could connect the dots. In their eyes, I was still the dependable Helena, just a little distracted, a little tired. The facade was perfect. Inside me, every delayed payment and silent refusal was a ripple of control, a tightening noose around the entitlement that had strangled me for years. At night, I filed paperwork to reclaim the deed, the legal battle lines drawn quietly in the margins of my life. I notified the bank of suspicious transactions, setting a watchful eye on accounts that had been abused under my silence. Daniel was the only one who fully understood the depth of the coming reckoning. Our late-night conversations were hushed but fierce, filled with strategy and shared determination. The calm before the storm was electric, a tension that vibrated beneath the surface of our lives. The family remained oblivious, blissfully unaware that their parasitic grip was about to be severed with surgical precision. I felt a mix of dread and exhilaration. Finally, the power to reclaim my life was within reach. It was during one of those rare, quiet evenings, as I sifted through a box of old family files stored in the attic, that I found it. A letter, yellowed with age, but unmistakably addressed to me, in my grandmother's handwriting. My heart caught in my throat as I unfolded the fragile paper, the edges feeling like the fragile threads of the past reaching across time. The letter was a revelation. My grandmother had established a trust for the family home and all related assets, explicitly naming me as the sole beneficiary. The wording was clear, unambiguous. No sale or transfer of ownership could occur without my express consent. I could feel the weight of her foresight, a protective shield she had tried to build for me against the very betrayal I now faced. Attached were notarized signatures and codicils reinforcing her intentions, legal safeguards that made the deed transfer by Lucy and Richard not just unethical, but outright illegal. The blood drained from my face as the full extent of their treachery dawned on me. They had forged documents, secretly stolen what was meant to be my inheritance. My grandmother had anticipated the disputes, the fractures that greed and entitlement could cause, and had armed me with this document to protect our legacy at all costs. The letter was a damning indictment, a sword forged from the past to cut through the lies of the present. The room seemed to close in around me. I sat frozen, the letter clutched in shaking hands, my breath shallow and rapid. The betrayal was no longer a vague feeling of being undervalued. It was criminal theft, a calculated, malicious act that struck at the heart of my family and my identity. The discovery changed everything. My resolve hardened into something unbreakable. I was no longer just a woman fighting for respect. I was a rightful owner, a protector of a legacy, a force backed by law and justice. The stakes had escalated beyond personal grievances into the realm of moral and legal righteousness. This revelation was a turning point, a shift that filled me with a fierce clarity I hadn't known I was capable of. The family's parasitic grip was not just a matter of entitlement, but a deliberate theft that would no longer go unanswered. I could feel the weight of my grandmother's faith in me, their letter a torch lighting the path forward. The game had changed, the stakes were higher, and the moral imperative undeniable. The battle for justice was no longer an option, it was a responsibility. And I was ready, With the letter safely tucked away, I began the first phase of reclaiming my life with quiet resolve. I started by withdrawing financial support with deliberate, measured steps. No announcements, no confrontations. Payments for Lucy's credit cards and car loans simply stopped. The silence from my side was deafening, a cold reprieve from the years of unspoken sacrifice. Lisa's childcare assistance dwindled without explanation, a subtle cut that disrupted the comfortable dependency they had all grown used to. The changes were gradual, but unmistakable, a slow withdrawal of the safety net that had kept their tenuous stability intact. The family noticed. Overdue bills began to pile up. Creditors' calls filled the air with mounting urgency, and whispered worries spread like wildfire. Lucy's calls went unanswered, her texts ignored. The silent treatment was no accident. It was a strategy, an escalation that left her grappling with the first real consequences of her actions. I maintained my composure in public, refusing to rise to the bait of provocation or guilt. Daniel stood steadfast beside me, a quiet pillar of support and strategy, helping me navigate this new terrain with calm precision. The ripple effects were immediate. Confusion and anxiety crept through the family, faces once smug now shadowed with uncertainty. Small cracks appeared in their facade, fractures I intended to deepen with patience and control. The parasitic dynamic that had fed their entitlement was unraveling, and I was the one holding the scissors. My approach was measured, almost clinical. No dramatic confrontations, no explosive outbursts. Just a steady, chilling withdrawal that spoke louder than words ever could. The message was clear. The era of exploitation was over, and the balance of power had shifted irrevocably in my favor. Each day brought a new sense of control, a reclaiming of boundaries I had never dared to set before. I wasn't just cutting off funds, I was dismantling a toxic system of dependence, forcing them to face the consequences of their choices. And as the silence grew louder around me, the calm in my heart grew steadier. This was just the beginning, the first moves in a game I was now determined to win. The family's grip, once so suffocating, was loosening, and with each passing day, I felt the weight of my own freedom returning. The room was stifling, the air thick with whispered tensions as the extended family gathered under one roof. The weight of unspoken grievances palpable in every sideways glance and stiff smile. I had called this meeting, not out of malice, but necessity, to shatter the illusion that had bound me to a lifetime of silent sacrifice. As I unfolded the letter from my grandmother, the one that had been tucked away in the attic for decades, a hush fell over the room. I could see the flicker of recognition and disbelief ripple across their faces, especially Lucy's. Holding the fragile paper steady, I looked each person in the eyes, feeling the gravity of the moment settle heavily on my shoulders. "This home and everything in it belongs to me," I stated calmly, the words clear, deliberate, carrying the weight of legal authority and personal betrayal. "As my grandmother intended, the transfer you made was fraudulent." It wasn't a scream or a demand, but a quiet, immovable fact. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, as Lucy's face paled. The bravado drained from her features like ink bleeding from a letter. I watched the slow crumble of her parasitic facade, the power she'd wielded for years evaporating in front of everyone. Lisa's eyes darted away, torn between loyalty and the undeniable truth in my voice. Daniel stood beside me, his presence a steadying anchor. I felt my own heart pounding, but I spoke with measured control. "From this moment forward, there will be no more financial support from me. No further communication unless it is respectful and honest." My voice did not waver, yet it was neither harsh nor furious. This was not about vengeance. It was about reclaiming dignity and setting boundaries. I saw nods from some relatives, subtle but unmistakable, silent admissions of regret and newfound respect. Others shifted uncomfortably, perhaps embarrassed for having enabled Lucy's entitlement. Lucy tried to form words, a desperate attempt to deny or deflect, but the room no longer belonged to her. The power dynamic had flipped. I was no longer invisible, no longer the scapegoat or the silent provider. I was the authority, the rightful heir of not just property, but respect. The weight of years of belittlement lifted slightly, replaced by a fierce calm. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully, meeting Lucy's eyes one last time. This ends now. The room held its breath, and I knew this was the moment. The long-awaited reversal where I stood tall, not as a victim, but as the woman who would no longer be undermined. The fallout was immediate, though I had prepared myself for the storm. Lucy's world began to unravel in real time, creditors lining up with their demands, her credit rapidly deteriorating as the financial support she'd relied on evaporated. I ignored the frantic calls, the pleading texts that spilled into my inbox with increasing desperation. "Please, Helena, we can work this out. I'm sorry. I'll change." Her voice trembled in voicemails left unreturned. Lisa tried to reach me too, her conciliatory messages tinged with worry and guilt, but I remained firm. My resolve was steel. No appeals would undo what had been done. The family shifted uneasily in the shadow of the truth, whispers turning into quiet confessions. Some relatives sought me out privately, their eyes downcast as they offered apologies for having turned a blind eye to Lucy's manipulation. I accepted their words with grace, but kept my distance. Boundaries were not just about punishment, but protection. Daniel noticed the subtle change in me, a peace settling in, a satisfaction that was calm, not boastful. I didn't gloat. The consequences were real and deserved, but my focus was on the future, not the past. The family's crisis forced reflection, but my limits remained intact. The parasitic grip loosened, and with every fractured relationship and unanswered call, I felt the fragile cage of obligation break away. Lucy's attempts to claw back control escalated rapidly. She threatened legal action, accusing me of defamation and trying to paint herself as a victim on social media. Her posts were desperate cries for sympathy, twisted versions of the story that sought to turn the family against me. She reached out to Daniel, trying to sow discord and pull him into her side, but he stood firm, his loyalty unwavering. The flying monkeys, the relatives she'd manipulated, pressed me to relent, to forgive, to restore what had been lost. But I was prepared. Every move she made was anticipated, every threat countered with legal counsel and emotional resilience. Some family members who had once supported or enabled Lucy now came to me, their apologies sincere, their regret evident. They sought limited reconciliation, acknowledging the toxic dynamics they had ignored. Lucy's isolation grew, her influence waning as the walls closed in. Her desperation was palpable, but only underscored her defeat. I remained unmoved, my boundaries unyielding. I didn't retaliate or escalate. My silence and steadfastness were the true victory. The family dynamics had shifted irrevocably, not by drama or vengeance, but by quiet justice and unshakable resolve. Lucy was defeated, not by anger, but by the calm power of truth and boundaries. 6 months later, I sat in the living room of the family home, now legally restored to my name. The walls seemed to breathe with a new energy, a sanctuary reclaimed, a legacy preserved. Daniel and I had grown closer through the struggle, our partnership fortified by shared trials and mutual respect. I had established clear limits. No unsolicited contact from Lucy, only brief and respectful interactions with Lisa. I no longer felt obligated to shoulder the burdens of a toxic family, and the silence I imposed brought a peace I hadn't known in years. "I don't miss the old family gatherings," I admitted quietly to Daniel one evening, "but I cherish the peace and respect I finally have." Lucy's consequences lingered, financial ruin and social exile, but she no longer occupied space in my daily life. This new chapter was defined by quiet strength and autonomy, a testament to resilience rather than bitterness. There was openness for future relationships built on honesty and boundaries, not obligation or manipulation. My journey, from the doubted girl struggling for recognition to a woman of achievement and authority, was proof that respect is earned, not demanded. The house around me, once a battleground, had become a beacon of hope. I breathed deeply, letting the calm wash over me, knowing that this was not the end but a new beginning grounded in dignity and self-respect.